reason to believe that, and every right to remain in that office, because while he was put in as a temporary person during the beginning to replace Preet Bharara, um, there was this idea that, because he was temporary, that Trump could just kind of, have AG Barr move him around if he didn't. Meanwhile, this guy, Berman, who is pushing back on this, is one of Trump's appointees. This is a guy who Trump put in. This is not a deep state situation for him. This is a circumstance where Trump has again hired someone under the belief, apparently, that they're going to be his personal Roy Cohn. And then, what do you know? They actually go about doing their job. The statement is making its way around social media. There is clearly a much bigger story here than the Trumpsters were hoping for. Barr himself, I think, was under this mistaken belief that he could dump this guy on a Friday night news dump. No one would pay attention because the Trump rally was today. Trump would probably say something, and he probably will, at the rally tonight that will cause the news cycle to flip out for the next 48 hours and perhaps lay the groundwork for covering this. That does not mean, by the way, that it is going to go away anytime soon. And this weird assumption that we still live in a news cycle wherein you can bury things on a Friday night is frankly ridiculous. And their reliance on this is amateurish. So, but let's go back into, so when this came up, I, like a lot of people, who've been following Preet Bharara, for example, on Twitter since he was ousted, are aware of the number of sketchy behind the scenes things that the Trump administration is trying to do, where they bend the legal system to their will and cover for themselves. And it's effectively trying to nationalize or federalize, I suppose, what used to be sort of the understood of New York real estate. New York real estate is so hinky and full of corruption and loose foreign money, laundered from every despicable being on the planet, because of the high value of that and its constant growth and its never-ending cycle of growth, that you can pretty much sit it there and come back to it later. It is a savings account for some of the biggest scumbags on earth, and has been. And everybody in the New York real estate market knows that if you pull a thread on that and you start to unravel it, you will do in the entirety of the New York economic substructure, and with it possibly the Dow. And so there's always been this let sleeping dogs lie attitude towards the money that's going around in New York. So everybody gets really twitchy when it comes to digging in New York real estate, especially. And Trump and his family and Kushner and their family have been living under this protection, this de facto protection, for decades. This has been how they have maintained their business model. This is without this protection. If this would not work in any other major city, maybe Los Angeles, Beverly Hills. Maybe you can shuffle some cash around in real estate there under some sort of, under the dark of night, but not anywhere near the scale of Manhattan. Just look at the Airbnb stories about Russian condos in New York. Here's what I would say. Anybody want to test this theory? Plan a trip to New York and use Airbnb. And you'll, somebody named Dave or Tammy or Chris or Leonard or somebody like that will contact you through the app and all this stuff, and you'll get this place. It's relatively decent price or whatever, and it's it's in a decently located area. And when you go to for a couple of weeks leading up to your trip, you'll experience this, and I'm telling you this from experience. You will go through the normal Airbnb process. Thank you so much, Billy. You will go through the normal Airbnb process, and then about a week before you show up, you will get a message from the person who owns the place you're going to Airbnb in New York, and it will be my friend or my boyfriend or girlfriend, or this person will arrange for you to get the keys. They will be at the concierge. Don't use my name, use their name. And when you get in the place, it will clearly be in the ownership of someone who is Eastern European, namely Russian. And the names involved in all the emails you'll get outside of the app will all be Russian. And Airbnb has been dealing with this in New York City, and New York itself has been dealing with this as this sort of underground hotel system the Russians are running in New York City, which is undermining the actual hotels in the city, and not Airbnb going, well, I own this place, I'm not there all the time, I'll loan it out half the time to make up some of my rent because it's very expensive. It's a scam, and it's been running for a very long time. Well, the money that's floating around there doesn't just go to these pieces. It doesn't. And thank you, Joyce. Appreciate that. So in all around it, there is a lot of this stuff going on constantly. Thank you, Joyce Kehoe, for the super chat, and thank you, Greenseeker 100. I appreciate that as well. So New York has always been flooded with this kind of money. And the financial markets are also flooded with lots of toxic cash. But the Security and Exchange Commission and the I guess Interpol and the international banking community, they try to keep a lid on this as much as possible. They're aware of a certain amount of it that always goes on. They're always putting out fires or plugging leaks where they happen. But in terms of Deutsche Bank, which is the primary mover in both where Trump got his money, he sued them, or they sued him for not paying back a loan he'd gotten on a Chicago deal, and he countersued them to not have to pay it back, because that's what you do when you're a billionaire. And over the last 20 years, Deutsche Bank has been in hot water twice for laundering Russian money. One where they were fined $10 billion by the EU, and one where they were fined $7.8 or $7.6 billion by the United States for laundering money. The first one was originally because Deutsche Bank had an office in Moscow. They set up an investment bank office. It was a direct pipeline for Putin and his buddies to funnel cash that they had sitting around into loan schemes. Money, by the way, that they were stealing from the Russian people and feeding out and enriching themselves, getting it out of the country. Literally siphoning wealth out of there. And through Deutsche Bank, and in many cases to people like Trump, of which there are many. Thank you, Hal Bakery. So William Barr, Friday night, abruptly tries to fire federal prosecutor in Manhattan, Jeffrey Berman, who was part of the team that put Michael Cohen in jail and was currently investigating Rudy Giuliani. The clash focused new attention on the efforts by Mr. Trump and his closest allies to rid the administration of officials whom the president views as insufficiently loyal, because that's why this guy was put in office. He was put in this position to run interference for Trump, not to do his job. We got to take a break. When we come back, I would like to unpack, if I could, some of the more hinky elements of the Deutsche Bank story and Trump's engagement with them, not the least of which is that Ivanka is the one who made the introduction of the banker at Deutsche Bank who oversaw a good portion of the loans to Trump. And her connection to that came through the Kushner family. So we'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Yeah. Thank you, 2257. Appreciate that. Thank you, guys. Ivanko. Hey, Noel. Slanche. Still looking at ex-SCOTUS's Kennedy sons to connect the dots in Deutsche Bank. Yeah, that's part of the unpacking that will happen too. So there, I mean, no news about Dale Hughley. I've heard that he's doing okay. I don't know if they're not saying whether it was a blackout or he had a stroke or what happened. So I'm waiting to hear. Hopefully it was just exhaustion. He, in the video I saw, he looked pretty skinny, like he hadn't been eating or something. My concern is that COVID affects young people. Sometimes it's these weird strokes that are affecting people. That's my worry. So, the rally hasn't started yet, so it's going to be a bunch of, noise and parking lot stuff till then. There's some really, really sketchy stuff beyond, I think, what maybe even most people know in the Deutsche Bank thing. I've got to find where her name is. Let's see. And then, yeah, I mean, the Bolton thing is just a little ridiculous. We'll get to that too. The rally is it's like an all-day festival. Thanks, Amy. It's like an all-day festival. It starts, I think, his speech is at 8 o'clock. The vice president speaks at 6:30, something like that. Yeah, and if you guys hear any more about, thanks, Brad, for the Jeff Berman not stepping down fund. Absolutely. If you guys hear anything about DL while I'm on the air, let me know. Does anybody know about the condition of Frederick Douglass? We're waiting here. I hear he's doing a great job, though.
60 seconds.
Thanks.
And it looks like we're going to be calling Brock, just keeping you Ty, just keeping you posted.
Oh, it's going to be Ty? Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Brian. Oh, good morning. There's already Trump Nazi causing trouble. Oh, boy. You think networks will cover it live? I think they'll show pieces of it. I expect Fox to cut away if he says anything particularly egregious. They're going to have him on like a 5-minute delay. One outside and one inside. Oh, that's glorious. It's going to be so ridiculous. Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. I hope it was just exhaustion. I mean, that's always the story, but hopefully.
This is Doris Davenport, host of The Doris Davenport Show. All local, all the time. Now let's get back to Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So at the half hour, we're going to have Ty from My Real Hero Power coming on to talk to us about not only...
Just Hero Power.
Sorry, say again?
It's just Hero Power, not My Real.
Yeah, I thought their their .com though says My Real Hero Power or something in it, doesn't it? I'm trying to do both at the same time. I should do one at a time. So Real Hero Power, they'll be on. Ty will be on at the break, and we're going to be talking not only just about the value of being able to pay your electric bill like normal and yet having it go to renewable sources, but also the industry that can follow, that goes around all the renewables that will be the jobs of the future and how we build on that. And so look forward to that. But in the meantime, this is a statement from Berman, the U.S. Attorney Jeff Berman. I learned in a press release from the Attorney General tonight that I was, quote, stepping down as United States Attorney. I have not resigned and have no intention of resigning my position, to which I was appointed by the judges of the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. I will step down when a presidentially appointed nominee is confirmed by the Senate. Until then, our investigations will move forward without delay or interruption. I cherish every day that I work with the men and women of this office to pursue justice without fear or favor, and intend to ensure that this office's important cases continue unimpeded. Which I'm sure we'll hear Trump flail and get angry about, because I think he just thought that guy would be gone in a night, and it's oh, cool, Bob, that you're on Hero Power. That's fantastic. So, Barr is looking to replace him. Clearly, he is one of the issues that Trump has with this is that Berman's office is looking into Rudy Giuliani. Giuliani is involved in as much sketchy crap these days as Trump is. The only thing missing with Giuliani may be, and I'm not aware of how it very well may be, that he has just as much hinky financial stuff going on in his background as Trump does. But at least the volume of it and the obviousness of Deutsche Bank in particular stands out when it comes to Trump, because they are the only bank that would loan to the Trump family at one point, because they were reneging on or losing money on so many deals, deal after deal after deal. And then like a big shirtless knight on a horse, Putin's money rode in through Deutsche Bank, bounced into Trump's bank accounts, with apparently no real desire to get them paid back. Although if I understand this correctly, most of Trump's loans mature next year, or halfway through what would be his second term, and he would have to pay them off. They are collateralized personally. Which is maybe why he's freaking out as much as he is, and why he needs so much foreign money, is that he's collateralized these loans that are clearly Putin's cash through Deutsche Bank with his own personal holdings, something he normally doesn't do. He usually, bank shots other people's stuff or the property itself, and ends up walking away from anything that doesn't pay him a dividend. So the person that he's choosing to replace him with is the person he put in charge of the SEC, Jay Clayton. Jay Clayton used to represent Deutsche Bank. Jay Clayton was a lawyer. He's never prosecuted a case in his life, by the way, so he would be the first person to head up Berman's office who'd never prosecuted a case. But what Jay had done, not JG, who just super chatted, bless you, but Jay Clayton, what he was put in position to do was protect Trump, because in many ways the same way he did Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank was his client, and he defended them during the time the Obama administration, I think, got the largest bank fine in the history of America against Deutsche Bank for laundering Russian money. The EU also got $10 billion from them. I don't know if he was a lawyer or worked for them during that first time they were sued. No reason to believe he wasn't. They seem to be using the same folks. So that said, the investment angle of Deutsche Bank, which has always had a hinky background, has always had this odd why would a bank loan money to a guy who had sued them not to pay them other money that they'd done back? Why would they let him collateralize loans when they know he does not have the personal wealth to pay it back at any time, even if he sold off assets, because there's no inherent worth in any of those things. They're all underwater. Everything is double collateralized. It's it's typical of how, like, people who may or may not lose a job will have a hard time getting a loan for $30, $50, $150,000 or $300,000 to buy a house or something like that. But people like Trump can keep using the same piece of property to, I guess, to take out loans for hundreds of millions of dollars, overlapping on top of that. And then you wonder how 2008 happened. We'll talk about that in a bit. So in this, Berman has said, we're going to keep looking into this for as long as we can. Now, there were, in the investment bank arm of Deutsche Bank, they had set up a Moscow office, and a London office, and several others as they were branching out pre-2008. And then as those things started to collapse, obviously, some of those retreated. The Moscow office stayed, though, until the EU fined them $10 billion for laundering money, in which case one of the ways that they showed that they were complying was they shut down their Moscow office. Okay, we're going to close that office, as if that's like people were bringing bags of cash in and rolling it out, and that's the only way they could do it. Right after that, as soon as they shut down the Moscow office, they started getting the same amount of money from the same sources through the Bank of Cyprus, through Latvia, through all these other secondary Eastern European countries. Yeah. Hello. Let's see, this is on Patheos. After defaulting on multiple loans and bond issues, Trump was considered a terrible credit risk and could not get loans for new projects in the late 1990s. Remember, this goes back to the late 1990s. Very crucial. Then up stepped Deutsche Bank, which financed Trump to the tune of $2 billion. Now Deutsche Bank is facing billions of dollars in fines for laundering Russian money. This was this article is from 2020, January. So this is ongoing. This isn't just the 10 billion before and the 7.6 after that. Congress wants to get documents from the bank to investigate the connections for obvious reasons, and the Supreme Court will rule soon on whether they get access to them. Deutsche Bank lent Trump millions after he defaulted on loans they had already gave him after he once sued them in 2008. Known derisively as a global laundromat, the bank is facing U.S. and British legal actions over its role in a $20 billion Russian money laundering scheme. 2 congressional committees want the bank to release 10 years of records involving Trump and his 3 oldest children as Congress probes Russian money laundering and possible foreign influence involving Trump. White House lawyers have fought the committee tenaciously. It's hoped that the Supreme Court's verdict will end years-long efforts on part of the U.S. officials to glean the truth about Trump's finances, especially at issues is whether Russians interfered in 2016. This all went through a woman named Rosemary T. Vrablic, the managing director of private wealth lending for Deutsche Bank. Ivanka Trump put her in touch with her dad, and after that, that's when the money started to come in. This is late 90s. Jared Kushner and his family also had a long relationship with Vrablic and borrowed money through her. Deutsche Bank watchdogs flagged several transactions that were suspect, and they were sent to federal regulators, but no action was taken at the time. This is the late 90s. There was a lot of, like, watch it, but that was it. Nobody actually did anything. So this was an ongoing aspect of this. Now, we got to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to be talking to Ty from Real Hero Power. We're gonna discuss that for a bit, and then I want to come back to this. So if you're following along the story, look up Rosemary Vrablic during the break. Vrablic, Vrablic, and you will start to see a chain of stuff that looks like a Clancy novel. We'll be back. yeah, so the website is myheropower.com. And Hero Power is just is the business name. So that's what I was overlapping in my head while I was looking at all these things, because I'm trying to juggle all these other stories at the same time. So, yeah, this is some really sketchy stuff. You guys are gonna like this. It's a nearly a murder mystery level story today. So, Benny Loco, some of these rich folks do pay for their crimes. Yeah. Hal has overlapping in his head. Yes, it happens. I'm glad DL is doing fine. We'll check in on him regularly. Thanks, NCIS 2 Doctor Who. Thanks for the bits. I appreciate you dropping in. I understand. I'm sorry you have to work on a Saturday in that regard. So I'm gonna see him broadcast an incident in Tulsa. What kind of incident? Oh, thanks, Sky the Cowgirl 3, Cow G3. Thanks for subscribing. That's really awesome. So, yeah, there's a lot of sketchy stuff. Hal, did you see my comment about DL? I didn't, Richard. Any word? Thank you, Arlene. Appreciate it. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you just being here every day. It means a lot. It's great to see you guys. Woman arrested for a peaceful protest in Tulsa. Was she trespassing? Was she not moving when they said move? What was the Hal, can you please make subtitles into Russian? I'm just from Russian. I don't know English. Yep. Prod by Pianstone. I apologize. I don't have the ability to do that in here. If I did, I would. I will try to do it later if that's a possibility.
Back in 60, and we got Ty on the line.
Okay, cool. Why is it choppy all of a sudden? Weird. That's an issue. He's doing fine per an hour ago. Seems like he was exhausted. Okay, that's good news. I've been exhausted on the road. I've pushed myself, as far as the volume of shows, and really found myself wow, I'm dizzy, tired. But I don't drink or party or hang out late after shows. And I can't imagine adding that to the mix. That seems ridiculous. How she was sitting with a BLM t-shirt on in the place or whatever. Is that what did they remove her from the space because they thought she was going to be a... All right. Yeah, whatever.
This is Damian
Thanks,
Perdue
Brad.
of Think Theory Radio, Saturdays at 6 p.m. You're listening to Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Welcome to the show. So with us right now is Ty from myheropower.com. Ty, are you with us?
I am. Hey, Al. Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. Glad to. Thanks for supporting the station. A lot of the shows on the station wouldn't be here without you. But also, I'm a big fan of the business model you guys came up with, and its ease of use. So for those people who aren't familiar with it, catch them all up. You can, by the way, if you miss any of this, you can go to theclimatepod.com, and they have a podcast about climate issues, about the company, how it works, how you can improve you can vote with your dollar as far as your power in a way that you didn't have the ability to do before. But catch everybody up, Ty, if you could, on how it works if they're just learning about this.
Sure. So Hero Power is literally the easiest and most affordable way for anyone to support clean energy. So if you live in Illinois, you can join Hero Power. It takes 2 minutes. And once you join Hero Power, we will match 100% of your electricity consumption with renewable energy certificates at no extra cost. So you join Hero Power, you pay your electric bill, your utility pays us, and we pay a wind farm. It's that simple. And we've also added the Solar Share program that allows Hero Power, allows people outside of Illinois to join Hero Power and to support clean energy. Actually, for $5 a month, you can support solar energy that's developed and generated in Illinois, and you actually get rewards back based on the power that's generated by those solar panels. So it's we've made it super simple and super affordable for people to support clean energy, and as you know, that's critical right now. We've got to get more clean energy on the grid.
That's right. And a lot of people, I think, one of the problems you run into is that people get overwhelmed with the idea of like, I want to do something like this, but how do I convert the power that I use to, to clean energy or renewables if it's not offered specifically by my electric company? If it seems like an insurmountable goal. And for a lot of people, I think the only option they think that's in their head is, can I throw some solar panels on my house? What does that involve? Is there still the tax break for it? All that kind of stuff. And then it dies right there because life has enough problems already. And so allowing this, if you're in the Chicagoland area especially and you're starting to branch out, explain how it branches out. But if you go to myheropower.com, you can get all the information, and it's a very quick setup. And you can be voting with your dollars on what kind of power you want to be getting.
Exactly. I mean, here in Chicago, our local utility only matches 6% of their customers' electricity consumption with renewable energy certificates. It's super easy to join Hero Power, and when you do, we match 100%. So you don't have to go to you don't have the money or the time to put solar panels on your roof, or maybe you live in an apartment or a condo or just a house that doesn't have access to a sunny roof, and you still want to do something. Joining Hero Power is literally the easiest way to support more renewable energy.
That's great. So, what do you see as the economic benefit long term? Because I think a lot of people hear phrases like Green New Deal and those kind of things, which sound like great branding exercises. But when you get into the nitty gritty of the Green New Deal, for example, there's some gaps in the how part. And I think that's what shies people away from making large investments in or changing their own power impact in their lives. What do you guys see as the next job opportunity, the next, step forward in climate positive energy usage?
Yeah, I mean, that was a great question. And the thing about green jobs is this is what's going to bring us out of this current recession. Joe Biden knows it. Our Congress knows it. And we're going to have a ton of new jobs as a direct result of investing in the green economy. There was actually a report that was released last week out of Berkeley, and this report basically lays out a plan to achieve 90% renewable energy on the grid by 2035. So this is a much more aggressive plan than the 2050 plans that we've been seeing. And this one says exactly how many new jobs we're going to be able to create. We're going to have 500,000 more jobs every year as a result of this plan. So we're talking about manufacturing jobs, building the turbines, assembling the solar panels. We're talking about jobs to install these solar panels and wind turbines and batteries. And of course, we've got blue collar jobs, we've got white collar jobs. All sorts of jobs are going to come out of this new green economy, and we avoid $1.2 trillion in health and environmental costs and 85,000 deaths through 2050 alone by investing in more green energy.
Yeah. Well, one of the areas where I've always found that we can find common ground with what would be the other side in a lot of people's estimations is the idea that even people who aren't sold on climate change as a global phenomenon needing to be addressed, it doesn't take a lot of brains to point out that you wouldn't put your mouth on the back of the tailpipe of a 57 Chevy and be able to jog immediately afterwards. That pollution is the inarguable reality of this. And when it comes to things like fossil fuels, the residual burned fuel itself, the smoke, the coal sleuth, the extra dust that ends up in the rivers and streams, the busted pipelines, all the ancillary effects of those things, which we absorb as Americans and as citizens of the world in that regard, that everybody does. When you're around that stuff, you absorb that as a cost of using that fuel source that you just kind of take for granted. You just assume that cost is there. You just forget that it's, that the taxpayer is paying for a lot of these cleanups, that most of these companies get away with dumping their waste products with a very small fine that's minuscule compared to what it would cost to actually get rid of the waste properly. And so we all absorb this cost that we don't even factor into the price of the fuel itself. If you did, it would be exponentially expensive compared to what we pay for it now, if it wasn't subsidized by that. And whereas renewables don't have any of that back-end cost. They may have developmental costs in the beginning, like everything, but they don't have that ancillary cost of 100,000 kids being sent to the emergency room with asthma-related issues every year due to pollution, for example. That burden on our medical system, our healthcare system, goes away if you can find some way to transition us to cleaner, more environmentally friendly forms of fuel.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. And there's so many examples of this. I mean, there was a report or study done earlier this week, actually, just a couple of days ago. It was released in the Journal of American Medicine that showed just how dangerous living close to these power plants, coal plants, natural gas plants is to mothers that are expecting. The adverse pregnancy results are significantly higher for those that are living in polluted areas. And unfortunately, these power plants, natural gas plants, are often built in communities with people of color. And these communities are even more negatively impacted by this. Right. So that we saw, in this study, that Black mothers were the most impacted by this. And it's just, it's another example of why, we've got to come up with a clean, a transition to a cleaner economy that takes into account the environmental injustice, the racial injustice that's been, so much of what has built up the fossil fuel industry and kept it going. And we've got to solve this, and a green, an investment in green jobs allows us to do that.
Yeah, I have, I talk a lot about how, and by the way, I'm talking to Ty from Hero Power. It's myheropower.com. They started in the Illinois area and are allowing people to, using the exact same bill that you pay every month, you can make a choice for your money that you pay for energy to go to a cleaner renewable source without any shift. You don't have to attach a transformer to your house. You don't have to erect a wind turbine in your yard that's 600 feet tall and requires a light so low-flying aircraft don't hit it. It's very uncomplicated. myheropower.com. Go there, just read about it. If it works for you, just go ahead and do it. That said, one of the things that people always forget, and if you watch old horror movies, or even, quite frankly, the Thriller video, which was based on the old horror movies, old werewolf movies of the 50s, was that there didn't used to be a gas station on every corner. They used to be fairly rare. They took an act of the nation to create this infrastructure so that cars could drive far enough to be useful. There was range anxiety. There was so much range anxiety with gasoline that there were horror movies made about it. Multiple horror movies. The opening of Clue starts with one of them having a car broken down because it's out of gas. We as a country decided this was necessary for for moving the country forward and for the business of the country to create this infrastructure, to give them tax breaks, to support the fossil fuel industry so that we could create this, this circulatory system of energy within the entire country. It wouldn't survive unless we had done that. And now that we're trying to move towards renewables, it's somehow a shock to everyone that it requires help to get on its feet, or a transitional period where it's not 100% convenient, the way we have expected gas stations and coal plants to be. Not understanding that there was decades wherein we as taxpayers kept those things afloat until they could make hand over fist tons of money. The oil, we all heard a couple months ago where Trump was trying to bail out the oil and gas industry from the Russian-Saudi game of chicken, saying, well, this is so many jobs. There's so many jobs at stake. Yeah, those jobs only exist because the United States and other Western nations that decided they wanted to use oil, quite frankly, created an infrastructure around them and helped those countries build up from scratch. So this is way easier. Just shifting who you pay for your energy that transition was not available in the 50s in these moments. So take advantage of it if you can. We have to take a break. I appreciate you coming on, Ty. It's always great to have you on here and to talk about this stuff. Say hi to Brock for me. You guys are amazing. myheropower.com. Check it out. They're fantastic. And we'll see you next time, Ty. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Hal. Take care.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Take care. Great work. Okay, we'll be back right after this.
And Hal Ike called during the break. We got him on hold.
You sorry?
During the interview, Hal Ike called. I got him on hold right now.
Oh, great. Okay, cool. Is it chat room, is the audio choppy, or is it just my headphones that are being weird? Because it might be that. Is audio okay your way, Chicago?
Yeah, you sound fine here.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to turn off my headphones and turn them back on just to see if that's what's causing it. It might be. Hopefully that's better. I won't know until we get a super chat or something like that, or somebody subscribes or throws some bits or super hearts, and then I'll be able to hear audio from the thing. But or I guess Chicago could check me, but there you go. Okay, I'm glad it sounds so good. I noticed that you guys didn't say anything, so I was just letting it slide. Thanks, Jeff. Super chat. Excellent. Thanks, Amos. I thought gas stations were built by cola companies. Never seen they didn't have a cooler vending machine full of cola. Well, that's always been an issue.
60 seconds.
That's way better. Yeah, it was my headphones being weird. They were having a signal overlap or something. How would our ranch use hero power? Well, you would basically just have them be the conduit by which you pay your power bill, and they would just buy credits for renewables with the money that you pay to the energy companies. That's how it usually works. I don't know if they do it in your area, so you have to check. I'm a fan of hydrogen, Noel. I think there's a ton of people who in the battery industry who, you know how like batteries are to clean energy what natural gas is. It's a step. I think hydrogen is the much cleaner fuel. and not having to have batteries is way better, long term using hydrogen.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Welcome back. So, before we talked to Ty, by the way, myheropower.com, check it out. We were talking about the fact that Trump has all this money that came to him through Deutsche Bank, that Deutsche Bank has been fined multiple times, billions of dollars for laundering Russian money. It was so bad they had to shut down their Moscow office. When they did, all this other money was flooding in from other sources that Russians could get money out of there. And I don't mean the Russian people. I mean the oligarchs and Putin's friends who are bleeding the country dry. This is, whenever I talk about the Russians in this, understand most of the time, unless I'm saying nice things, I'm talking about the government. I think most people do that with the Chinese, and I think a lot of people do that about America half the time as well. It's an important distinction to make. I have no reason not to respect and adore the Russian people themselves. I've studied martial arts with Russians. I appreciate them as human beings. I'm not a fan of their leadership any more than they are. I just live in a country where you can say it. So, that said, hundreds of millions of dollars, $2 billion loaned to Trump through Deutsche Bank, all of it sketchy as hell. And one of this guy, Bill Broeksmit, who was one of the, the people overseeing all this stuff. Well, there were three guys. This guy, whose last name is Vane, which I find interesting enough, Broeksmit and another fellow, and they all, Vrablik, the woman who gave Trump all the money, she worked under them. They were the ones who were in charge of setting up this this investment thing. So, this is from Money.cn, and this is a while back. Big fines keep coming for Deutsche Bank. The giant German lender was hit with $630 million in penalties on Tuesday over a $10 billion Russian money laundering scheme that involved Moscow, New York, and London branches. Follows a $7.2 billion settlement Deutsche Bank reached with the U.S. Department of Justice last month. This was during the Obama administration. And the $2.5 billion it agreed to pay in 2015 over interest rate manipulation. This is the LIBOR thing where they were messing around. The latest fines penalized Deutsche Bank's failure to deal with the stock trading scheme that enabled some of its clients in Russia to improperly move huge sums of money out of the country and into offshore accounts, according to regulators. The bank missed numerous opportunities. Yeah, they missed them. To detect, investigate, and stop the scheme due to extensive compliance failures, allowing the scheme to continue for years. So there was this software that was put in place after 9/11 that was to keep large chunks of terrorist money moving around. And for whatever reason, for 10 years, at Deutsche Bank, it just didn't work. It's just weird. So I don't know what it was, like a glitch, or they needed an update, or whatever. The phone has to be half charged before it'll even update itself automatically. I don't know what it was, but 10 years, right? We don't even know why it doesn't work, but it manages to stay broken during the entire time they're funneling money to Trump. So fears over the bank had enough money to pay its mounting fines from regulators escalated dramatically in September. The original U.S. Justice Department demand for $14 billion settlement over the toxic assets prompted Deutsche Bank shares to plunge to their lowest level in over 20 years. Stock price is still down 15% in general. Has stayed that way. German leaders said in September 2015 that it was closing its investment banking business in Russia and would in future work with Russian corporate clients from abroad, meaning Latvia and Bank of Cyprus, where members of Trump's cabinet have continued to work. Now, there are apparently Trump has 14 loans with Deutsche Bank for these major properties. According to Hospitality and Catering News, who, by the way, what other broadcaster would dig this deep and end up reading the newspapers around the hospitality business to dig up dirt on Trump? Moi, that's it. Just me. You're welcome. So normally a paper that is, talking about, I guess, whether you can have a classy restaurant with paper napkins or not, did this whole thing about the liability of Trump's loans to pay for these businesses that are all failing. Again, none of Trump's businesses have ever turned a profit. Not a one. They have never been out of debt. They have never actually made a profit. They have simply skated payments to keep some of the money. That's it. That's not profit. That's like skimming from the till when you work at a yogurt shop. That's not your salary. You're stealing from the money that's supposed to go to the business to keep it afloat. So, all right. President Trump is reported holding 14 loans. At least 6 of those loans represent a debt of around $479 million due over the next 4 years. Some are guaranteed by Trump himself, meaning a creditor could come after his personal, not corporate assets if he defaults, which he will. You'll see. If he holds on to the White House, the refinancing of these debts could take his conflicts of interest to absurd new heights. How will the public know if these deals are up on the up and up, or whether Trump is receiving sweetheart terms from a bank that wants to an in with the president? And what might a lender desire in return for helping Trump with financial gain? So the fact that he has collateralized loans is personally collateralized loan makes him particular. He couldn't get a security clearance for another job in government in this situation. And by the way, I know Ike is holding. I'm going to pick him up at the top of the hour if he can hang on, just because I only got 3 minutes left and I don't want to hem him in. We'll get him at the top of the show because I know he's on hold. So this is the part that's really sketchy to me. So this woman, Rosemary Vladeck, she works under, these guys who are setting up the investment arm of this. And this all leads up to 2008, by the way. All this money dumping that was done, loaning money to certain people and all this stuff, there is reason to believe, call me crazy, and if anybody's a financial expert out in the world, they can call into the show, 773-763-9278, or email me personally at bookhal@icloud.com. Go to houseparks.com. Write me a letter on this. But there is every reason to believe that Vladimir Putin is one of the richest people on the earth, supposedly worth $200 billion, even though his salary as president of Russia is, what, $146,000 US a year? Lost nothing in the 2008 crash of meaning. When you're worth 200 billion and you go down to 160 billion, who cares? So would it be worth it to you to spend $8 to $20 billion collapsing the Western economy when you know you have a stronger foothold, like getting a good grip on the side of the mountain and kicking the other climbers' hands because you know you can hold on? There's reason to believe that the 2008 lift and drop and maybe other bubbles set, the cyclical idea of collapsing the market and stuff, is a part of a money laundering or inflating scheme. And he wouldn't be the only person who would participate in it, but certainly one of the main players in this. And now there's 3 dead people associated with this. 3. We'll be back. So I have that's been, in reading on all this, you guys, reading up on the Deutsche Bank money laundering stuff, reading up on how it led up to the 2008 crash, how buying toxic derivatives and all this stuff and funding toxic derivatives and misleadingly labeling, C loans as A loans and all that stuff, that if you knew you could survive a worldwide crash because you live in a relatively isolated economy, be it China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, even India to some degree, and you were so well off that you would never drop below a certain point, and you knew it was coming so you could steady yourself against it. You could move stuff around in ways that it would still have worth when things came back. You could, as an act of war, attack the financial structure of a country and ride it out as everybody else collapses and buy everything that they have at fire sale prices. I mean, it's just a matter of scale. And I've always, we've all heard stories over the years of like somebody burns down a building for the insurance and there was a janitor working there and that person died, but the person who burned the building down got $100 million. And so they're able to kind of stomach the killing of one of their workers or even a couple of them to cover up this arson, intended or not. Whether they meant to kill that person or not in the process, they just didn't know they were there. They planned on burning the building down. The person was in there and they live with that guilt, but they made $100 million off this. And this is then it becomes a matter of scale. Well, how many? If one person is okay, how many hundreds of thousands would somebody who genuinely doesn't give a crap about humanity? Trump has done nothing about China depriving India of much needed water. Well, that's what the argument over Tibet is about. Like, we always think of Tibet as some sort of religious, ideological, or political fight between India and China, as far as almost like the Germans and whether Poland was part of Germania, right? That kind of an argument. And it's not. We think of it as territory, like Taiwan and the like, or Hong Kong for that matter, which is, one's about money and the other's about shipping. Tibet is 100% about water for both of them. Hal, I called from North Miami Beach, but lost signal during the solar power chat. I was asking if Stephanie Miller was auditioning to be on Batwoman or how to coral ring the White House. I have no idea. I think she'd be a great addition to the Batwoman cast. That'd be hilarious. Or to replace Batwoman, to be the new one. She's more of a lover than a fighter. I'm just saying. Unless Batwoman, they add to the story that she gets a couple extra dogs or something. Tried ordering a shirt, but I'm having problems. On which one, Greenseeker? On the Teespring or on Streamlabs? I have so many sources. I apologize. I'm always fighting to find like merch I can stand that looks good when you get it, and it's hard. It's getting better. It has been getting better, but as far as how sources are, like the original stuff just looked like somebody had put a piece of like excuse me, like duct tape on the shirt in letters or whatever. Yeah, Tibet has glaciers, hence fresh water. That's exactly it, Diane. That's 100% what it's about. Oh, Streamlabs. I'll look into it. I'm sorry. What's the issue? We'll figure that part of it out. Yep. Oh, yeah. Slagator Fantabulous. It's hanky as hell. I think I have the mouth and chin to play Batman. I think I could pull that off,
60 seconds and 3 callers total, Hal.
Thank you. So, okay. All right. Before I take these, I gotta yeah, okay. So some of these are in order. Yeah, there's so much hinky stuff. Trump is claiming victory over banning Bolton's book. when the exact opposite happened?
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you if the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Pus-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
So I will get back to the murder mystery that we were talking about in terms of Deutsche Bank and their oddly dying off executives who all seem to have been there when Trump was being funneled money by Russia and are now ending up tuts up, as they say. But Ike is on the phone, so I want to talk to him. Hey, Ike, welcome to the show. Are you with us? Hi, Ike. Are you there?
Hey, Brother Hal.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm
How
good,
you
thank
guys
you.
Doing?
We're good. We're holding it together.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, to jump in on the financial, I'll give you a heads up on something that happened this past week.
Mm-hmm.
This blowhole up there in the White House has directed and ordered that they're going to change the way they invest retirees' money, 401ks, and government pensions. And they're going to allow for high-risk investments, which means they're going to let the hedge fund managers get a hold of them and start charging outrageous amounts of fees and basically start ripping off private pensions, or public pensions, rather. So that's a heads up for anybody out there who's got a government pension. Or
Well, no doubt the Trump family, can now, knowing that they were going to be doing that, could put a investments in areas, knowing full well that they may these investments may fail later, but they're going to get an influx of cash over the next couple of years, which will be a great investment, and then you just bail out before the bill comes due.
Right. The
Ride the
article
wave
that I
up.
read about, it's $9 trillion
Jesus.
that's at stake here, or at risk. And if you take a 5%, which is actually a low fee for most hedge funds, you're talking about right off the rip $435 million.
Yeah.
So I'm just warning y'all. My sister's a retired special ed teacher, and she's always worried that the state of Florida one day is going to do like Detroit did, or a lot of other places have done, and just say, "Look, we're bankrupt. We can't pay it anymore. So screw you."
Right.
But I digress. What I really called about, the police brutality thing going on here. Number one, it's training. They've stopped. They've been trained to use lethal force too often. That's what it comes down to. Whereas back in the day, they never fired upon people that weren't armed, and when they did fire, they weren't trained to fire 3 rounds at a time.
Right.
Over the years, they've been trained differently. But here's my idea. There's a TV show. It's called Modern Marvels. Season 10, episode 10, and it's all about non-lethal weapons.
Right.
They have a weapon that will shoot. It's much like a flamethrower, except it shoots water and a powder. And it mixes at the nozzle, and whatever surface you shoot it onto, whether it's dirt, gravel, grass, pavement, whatever, the person can't stand up on it. You literally are put on your back. You cannot. You can't even crawl on it. If a vehicle tries to drive over it, it wraps around the tires and disables the vehicle. The vehicle can't go anywhere.
Right.
They've got a flashlight that's got a lens on it the size of a saucer. And it's got hundreds of LED lights in it. And if they point it at you and turn it on, its nickname's called the puke light. It'll make you sick to your stomach. It'll disable you.
Right.
Okay, so here's my idea. Let's take in each police department, depending on the size, it depends on the number of units you would need, but each police department, and train 2 officers with a specially equipped truck, okay, that have all these different types of non-lethal weapons in them. Everything from the gun that'll fire a net to a gun that fires that foam, that spray foam, like expandable foam. I've seen it. They've got it to where they shoot you with it and it hardens immediately.
Right.
and you can't move. But take two officers that are trained in negotiation tactics and de-escalation tactics, give them a truck loaded with these types of weapons, and have them respond. For example, the guy in Atlanta, number one, you didn't have to shoot him. Okay.
Well, here's what I'll say about all these. Like I am hesitant to Monday morning quarterback most of these kind of things, and I have seen the entire exchange from when they woke him up to when he was shot. That none of those cops, by the way, who are being charged with murder in this case and have been fired, are being charged or fired because of the shot that they fired. The reason that they are in trouble and the reason that they are being charged is because they did not apply first aid after he had been shot for 2 minutes. All of it rests on that. Everything leading up to it was considered a normal police interaction with somebody who resists arrest, seizes a weapon, fired back on him. One of it been shot. I mean, like all that kind of stuff. So I'll avoid that entirely. But I totally agree with you on responding with non-lethal stuff. The foam has always been a problem because if it gets in your mouth, you could suffocate. So that's why that was never deployed. But there's a bunch of other ones. You're absolutely right. That should be the primary thing available. And the 811 number instead of 911, perhaps, or those kind of things for somebody who is passed out, in a drive-through, makes way more sense.
Yeah. And being from Atlanta, let me just tell you something. There were multiple units that were in the area. That's number one. Number two, I don't give a damn who you are. If you shoot somebody in the back, even in the old time Wild West, they'd hang you for it. Okay? No. That cop was completely wrong. They were being made to look bad, and it's the same damn thing that happened here in Charleston with Walter Scott. When that cop shot that guy in the back, when he was running away from him, if there hadn't been film, he would have gotten away with it. These cops are out of control. They shouldn't be trained to the point that their first and only idea is to use lethal weapons, and that damn taser crap, not only can it kill you, but we've seen too many times where it's not sufficient. So anyway, I want to see specialized police units that are available each shift, that have a multiple different types of, and they're trained in de-escalation and negotiations, and they're there along with the regular cops to where if he breaks loose, then you've got somebody to be able to, and by the way, they make one other type of a gun, and it's just it shoots like a glitter, and it gets on you, and you know what they are? They're RFID cards, RFID tags. Yep. And you can be traced GPS all over everywhere you go. And by the way, that guy, they knew who he was. They knew where
had
he
his
lived.
car.
They had no reason to. They should never have shot him. And, I'm sorry, but like I said, North Charleston police shot Walter Scott in the back, or that guy in the back here. And I'm telling you right now, I know how these police are here. I know what they do. And I guarantee you they would have gotten away with it. They would have gotten away with it. It was only because
I think we're all living in the post-Reagan shutting down the institutions of mental health in this country, and the fact that it used to be a running gag in cartoons that guys in a white van would show up with a butterfly net and snatch you if you were losing your mind, and it was a cliche. We all remember those cartoons and those jokes. That was an infrastructure that was created in the country to deal with mental illness that was totally separate from police officers. I also think that there's a factor, and this is from having Ellie in my family and seeing the kind of stuff that they see a lot of times, is that AIDS and fentanyl and needles played a huge shift in how cops interact with people. That touching somebody, interacting with them physically, where, gets to be a panic point in a way that it didn't in 1987, let's say, for a lot of folks.
Not only that, but the proliferation of weapons when they've got to come up against fully automatic AR-15s, and you've got people out here. Why in the hell is it that an average citizen can buy body armor? Why is it they can buy cop killer bullets and armor-piercing rounds and the kind of crap that they're selling out here, okay? The cops are scared off their nut, and I don't blame them, know, and yes, it would make you a little bit quicker to pull a trigger on them. But at the end of the day, if we can't do nothing with the gun laws, that's the reality that we live in, and the police are going to have to be able to answer it. And that shootout in L.A. back in the day when those guys held up that bank and had all that body armor on, and everybody across the country saw that crap. They said, well, yeah, you're going to turn. Well, that's when they started turning the police from GI police into GI Joes.
Right.
Now they're just the same damn thing as military. But and I do want to see this damn tear gas stopped, and I want to see these rubber bullets stopped because they'll hurt your ass. And
right.
Not to mention somebody like me, or that have compromised lung problems, etc.
Yeah.
I can't get around it. It would kill me. So,
right.
And I eat up too much time as usual. But hey, brother,
no worries, brother.
You're doing a hell of a show, and
thank you, man. I love talking to you. That's why I wanted to hold you over into the.
Can we vote tomorrow? Come on, man. Let's vote tomorrow.
Right. Seriously. As long as we can do it healthfully, absolutely. All right. Take care of yourself, brother. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this.
Buddy.
Absolutely. Take care, Ike. We'll be back. And Michelle, thank you so much for your super chat. She loved hearing Ike on Alan Combs' show. Rip Alan Combs. Rest in peace, brother. And thank you guys. We'll be back right after this. Give the show a thumbs up and a like. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Full phone lines, Hal.
As you do.
The moment I got on, I'm like, hold. Crap.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a magnet.
Really is.
Yeah. Like they're all gonna, at some point, we all need to save up and buy him a house. Thanks, Julius. Agreed. Vote blue. Oh, the problem seems to be when I have to choose the delivery option. Okay. I will look into it. Apologies, Green Seeker. I'll look into it. See if maybe it's their sites being hung up today. Sometimes that happens. Patreons assemble. We're up to 270 now. There's 383 of you in here. We've got 270 patrons right now at varying degrees of support, and I appreciate and love you guys. If you can, if you're in the chat room and you don't subscribe to the show or super chat or any of those other things, and you'd like to become a Patreon, now's a good time to do it. Our goal is 500. That's when we can afford to get a producer for the show regularly. So that's what we're shooting for. Obviously, we'll have a goal beyond that once we do, but it'd be nice to hit that 500 mark. Again, if you can, great. If you can't, we're just glad to have you here. So thank you. And thank you, Rebecca. You guys are great. If you don't want to support the show that way, you can always super chat.
60, Hal.
Thank you. You can always super chat the show, or you can go to paypal.me/HalSparks. Thanks. I keep trying to remind myself to do the ad part of it. I see all these YouTube folks, and they're such pros about it, and it's always weird for me. But it's going to be hard for me to convince the Frangelas and the Fugelsangs and the Stephanie Millers of the world if I can't do it myself. You should try that. Like, oh yeah, let's see you do it. All right. Thanks, Richard.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Okay, so I want to, before we got full phone lines, I want to get to everybody, but I want to put in I want to kind of put a button on this story of what we're talking about with Deutsche Bank, the money that went to Trump, all this stuff. There's a few books out on the subject. They're not hard to find, but in 2014, this guy William Brokesmith, who was part of the sort of the three-man team that ran their investment bank angle of things, hung himself in his garage instead of showing up for lunch with his wife and son. And scattered around his feet when they found him were multiple suicide notes to people, including the head of the bank and some other people, about sketchy stuff that he was part of, that he either felt guilty about. those parts haven't been made public entirely, as far as I know, just sections of them, along with lots of paper about the bank, forms and information about the bank's clients and stuff. It was spread all over the garage floor, basically to be found with him. And this is from I don't know when who did the primary on this article, but January 26, 2014, instead of meeting his wife and son for lunch, Mr. Brooksmith slung a dog leash over a door in his London home. This is in London. Hanged himself from it. Left by his side was a neat stack of company documents related to Deutsche's New York banking operations. Gee, who gets money from Deutsche Bank that's in New York in 2014? And suicide notes addressed to relatives as well as to Mr. Jane, who was his direct supervisor there. Brooksmith had hung himself in January 2014 and left behind several suicide notes, including one to former Deutsche Bank CEO Anshu Jain. Scattered around were a number of internal papers from Deutsche Bank. The documents belonged to a New York unit of the bank, the DBTCA. This DB entity had made available loans of several $100 million to, wait for it, Donald J. Trump and members of his family. Even though Trump had failed to repay Deutsche Bank some large loans, the DBTCA also was the focus of an investigation into a money laundering scheme. Deutsche Bank had laundered $10 billion for Russian customers. At this time, it is not clear whether where the documents found next to Brooksmith are. So, dude puts bank documents all over the floor from the DBTCA, which is the company, the under company, the trust company under Deutsche Bank that he worked with, that gave money specifically to Donald Trump, that was investigated and fined for laundering Russian money, spreads it all over the floor, writes multiple suicide notes, clearing his conscience, supposedly, and then nobody knows where the papers that were around his body are. So this guy, so that's in 2014. The other guy, Edison Mitchell, who was part of the three-part team, remember, Trump's relationship with Deutsche Bank goes back to the late 90s. Edison Mitchell, the three stooges that were in charge of this hinky lending at Deutsche Bank, died in a plane crash in 2000. Tom Bowman, who took over the role that Brooksmith left open, and was, one of the people who was cooperating in these situations, I guess, was part of the refinancing or the process of doing it. It's a little murky. But Bowman, who had this guy Tom Bowman, who was in charge of he took over after the other guy had killed, after Brooksmith had killed himself, hung himself in November of last year. Mainly during a time when Brooksmith's son started, when Adam Schiff had called Brooksmith's son as a witness to speak before Congressional Finance Committee about these weird loans in October. He had witnessed, I guess, some of the papers. He knew, he had seen the notes. He knew later on what his dad did. They got his girlfriend a visa into the United States to basically get them out of Europe so they couldn't be snuffed by whoever had been behind all these loans. And 3 weeks later, Tom Bowman hangs himself in Malibu. Thank you, Greenseeker. There are 4 people involved in setting up this investment scheme. 5 total if you count Vladnik, and three out of 5 of them are dead. And it's all around, Russian money laundering in New York, New York real estate market leading up to this, and Trump's loans becoming due in a few years. And part of this whole like, oh, we're gonna, Trump's gonna work out this deal with China, and she's a personal friend of mine, and kissing his ass, and this whole run up, by the way, to the deal he's making, and how COVID is growing, but he's going, they've got it handled. The Chinese have been like, she's a personal friend of mine. He's good. Now he hates them, because they're going to ruin his chances for re-election. And that's the one thing keeping him out of jail is being president. It's because he's got Barr covering his ass and trying to fire the guy at SDNY who would be looking into some of this garbage. That Giuliani, by the way, is up to his knees in, where I guess Trump is up to his neck. So in all of this, this all reads like a mystery novel that is so blatantly obvious that you would put it down after chapter 3 and go, this is just really on the nose. Let's grab one call before we take the break. Who do we have on the line, Devin?
First, we have Jill out in Michigan.
Excellent. Hey, Jill. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Hal.
Hi.
I've been this show all morning, so I'm glad you put me through. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness, I got a lot going on right now.
Sure.
My tablet went out. My computer went out. It's like,
yeah, it happens.
So,
it's not an accident. Everybody's living on the internet nowadays, so everything is our pile of stuff. And by the way, are you the Jill from the chat, or are you
yes,
just?
I am.
Oh, hi, Jill. That's fantastic. Because my sister's name is Jill as well, so I'm surrounded by Jills on all fronts. So it's it stands out.
Yeah, for me. I'm not on the chat right now.
Oh, gotcha.
On my home phone.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I thought I'd call you and tell you what's going on with that. And I really appreciate you so much giving me through the day. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I appreciate
my dad just went in for a catheterization yesterday. He's going to have heart surgery next month. So, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's a lot. My dad just had an operation as well, and as did my mom. My mom got her eyes fixed, and before all that, there was this huge lead up because of her age and his age that, about COVID and making, they both got tested before they went in. They had to have the entire, area where they were getting their surgery, cordoned off from any COVID cases and stuff. Are they doing similar things? Is there a whole walkthrough for that for your dad? Yeah, that I think scares more people than almost anything, is that you go in for something that, maybe you could wait a month, maybe you could wait 2 months. It's hard to say, or maybe it will become crucial and dangerous in a matter of days and you need to get it looked at. But the fear is, well, what if I go in there for this thing that could wait and catch something that won't? And I think that's affected so many people on a health level that it's, again, one of those ancillary effects nobody pays attention to, like we were talking about with fossil fuels. Like, nobody counts, like, oh, gas is $2.50 a gallon or $3 a gallon or whatever, and not counting the extra $3 it adds to every transaction in your life because of the pollution and other damages that it does. So, yeah, we run from that. But I'm so glad that you're with us, by the way, regularly. As a listener. Did I miss anything you wanted to say? Because we're going to get to the break, and I don't want to step on it.
Okay, I love you guys in the chat. I love you so much.
Oh, thanks.
Cameron. Oh, my goodness. As soon as I get back, my sister ordered me a new tablet, so I thought I'd let you know.
Oh, nice. I see. Great. So this is entering the chat the old-fashioned way by calling in. It's great. That's right. Like we're all. That's the. Imagine being at a time in history when the step backwards is using the telephone. It's hilarious. All right. Well, we have to take a break, Jill. Thank you so much for calling in. We're glad you're with us in this regard, and I can't wait to have you back in the chat as well. So everybody says hi, and they say we love you, and they're sending hugs and all kinds of other stuff. Such a good family. So, all right, appreciate it, Jill. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Great. Oh, thanks, Lipschitz. Oh, that's lovely. Jesus. There was a shooting in the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, and the police had to go in with a group of 10 officers to extract the shooting victims. There were 2 of them. One was deceased. Nice work, guys. Cool. So was it so there's people walking around the autonomous zone with guns. Where's the how do we do a Chaz autonomous collective enforcement group volunteer reform so they don't use deadly force on people that they could otherwise subdue? Where's that? Good grief. Al has the Clint Eastwood squint. It's true. I'm going to look really awesome when I'm old.
$60 seconds, Hal.
Bring in the BLM tanks, right. Thank you.
And we're also down to 1 caller because a bunch of people started hanging up for no reason.
All right. That happens. Good. All right. That saves me the extra time. It might have been just because they wanted to talk about cop stuff, and then I went back to the other story.
Probably.
Yep. Also, I'm not unreasonable, so they tend to, like, plan the incendiary troll thing and then have a real problem because I'm not, you guys are such radicals with the, and I'm like, no, I'm pretty, actually, I'm a reasonable human being. I just want genuine progress.
How crazy of a concept.
I know. Nuts, isn't it? Like, yeah. Splitters! Ouch, Amy. Thanks.
I'm Dick Kay from Back on the Beat, and here is the Mega Worldwide Radio program with Hal Sparks.
So Jeffrey Berman is being broomed out, or Barr is trying to broom Jeffrey Berman out, who was Trump's choice to head SDNY after he broomed Preet Bharara, and he wants to put Jay Clayton in. Jay Clayton was in charge of the SEC, used to defend Deutsche Bank, and has been manipulating the Bitcoin market since he got in. His whole thing has been, quote unquote, modernizing regulations, otherwise known as getting rid of them. so that we can have another 2008, because there's so much disaster econ money to be made there by the, future Enron creeps of America. And in doing this, Berman, who was put in there by Trump, is like, yeah, I'm not going. And that, I mean, I don't doubt we're going to hear something from the Trump rally, which I will hop on and do all or some of later on when it's part of when it streams. I'll obviously have to stop certain parts, and I wouldn't do the rest. I'm just going to do the Trump speech itself, because I can't take the hit where they, on YouTube, where they try to hit me for playing Lee Greenwood. Like, Lee Greenwood gets to keep all the money you made from streaming your show today because they open this thing. None of the money goes to the Rolling Stones. That's weird. But let me grab one more caller, because we have one more caller on there before we get to this, and I want to button up this story about Berman, the SEC, Deutsche Bank, and the multiple dead people, all the people who keep hanging themselves, Jeffrey Epstein style, that have to do with Trump's financial interactions with Deutsche Bank and the Russians. Who do we have, Devin?
Next, we have David out in San Francisco.
Oh, excellent. Hey, David, welcome. Glad you could join us.
Oh, hey, Hal. Yeah, hey, Hal. I'm glad you ran through that new, in fact, the idea that he was working on electronic currencies and whatnot.
Yep.
I've been saying for years that Trump is a money launderer. And when you start looking at the ability to do money laundering in a mysterious electronic currency that you can never test the value of, and that you use the U.S. dollar against a mysterious top secret kind of currency, I mean, you talk about a civil war and hyperinflation and lack of faith in a nation when it can't even control its value anymore. That's your Trump scenarios. So,
it's his dream situation. I also think it's interesting that most of the people who jumped on the Bitcoin bandwagon, who were like all in on it and just rallying behind it, are the same people who were bitching about the gold standard all during the Bush years. Remember that nonsense? Remember that, everybody's like, we don't even use the gold standard for our money anymore. Gold's real money. We need gold, and we stopped using it in Nixon and Vietnam, and it has no meaning. Went immediately and jumped in on a digital-based currency with no baseline. What are you talking about? That was never based on anything and can be erased with a keystroke. Literally, someone could shut it down tomorrow forever. You can't do that with the cash in the United States economy. What are they? That always boggled my mind.
Yeah, the money launderers, and then the arms merchants and the drug smugglers, and they
human
create
traffickers.
Their own value.
Right.
Sure, and then they basically create a whole desire to have this mysterious currency, but it has no basis in reality. So you talk about empty calories.
You could crater it whenever you want.
Sure, and you look at the history of money. It used to be that the money reflected your reputation. If you were a local shoemaker or a local artist or a local, washing the laundry, your reputation for quality goods was based upon how much you earned.
Right.
And the idea that nowadays somebody can create value, of course it's been creating value on other people's work, but then you don't even have to have actual work because it's top secret. And it just, then you can play fear against each other. My fear is stronger than your fear. So, if we were going to be humans again, or, some sort of civilized creatures, we would certainly want to have some kind of a reputational, a transaction
consistency
that's based upon our reputations.
Yeah, the idea, by the way, that you would, most people look at, trolling online or what people put forward as their Twitter account. If they're not verified, it could be anybody. It really could. And would you want a financial system based on that? Based on I can just make up an account personality out of anything, and it is based on nothing except for what you think it might be, and by the time you find out it's bad, it's too late. I've already got you. It reminds me of sort of libertarians talking about food safety. Well, we don't need all this money to spend on, on E. coli and rotten meat. If a company sells rotten meat or E. coli, they'll go out of business. Meanwhile, 12 people are dead. It's spread through 5 other states. The economies of those states have been wiped out by all the people who didn't die but got sick for weeks on end and couldn't show up for work. Companies are shut down. Coffee shops close. People get, downgraded in their, whether they get an A, a B, or a C from the health department, which is a permanent mark for a year, and that affects their business for the next year or whatever. But why do we need regulation around that? Because we recognize that plugging this hole affects everything downstream. That's the important thing. And and the same thing would be true of, SEC filings around Bitcoin and the like. But if they're like, no, let the floodgates go. If you live downriver from it, and you don't already own a boat, you're dead. But, that's life. So that part has always boggled my mind.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Ralph Nader and Jim Hightower and Howard Zinn. And they were always talking about local currencies. I think up in New York, for 40 years, they've had this Ithaca dollar. Various parts of the country have had local currencies.
Right.
So, in these bizarre times, it's always good to have a local currency. I got a local artist friend that's interested in drawing faces for, I think there was a famous woman. She was the first black banker in Virginia. And I've forgotten her name, but she's trying to come up with some nice original artists to do her portrait and put that on a local currency for parts of Virginia, whoever wants to use it. And they're also, you could have George Washington Carver, you could have all kind of different people.
Sure. Ultimately, eventually, you're talking about, and is it Maggie Walker you're talking about?
Yeah, that could be. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the problem with that is effectively you turn cash into stamps. That's what stamps are. Stamps are technically legal currency, but they have a very specific, sales point is the idea. And so you can put whatever you want on them. They're understood to mean whatever. That's effectively what debit cards have become. We're getting to the point where you can get any picture you want on a debit card, and then whoever the issuing bank of it is, can offer to have any art or none at all, that kind of thing. So
well, it's kind of an IOU, like an IOU, but you do it on a certain custom paper, and you may enlarge it or reduce it. Do it with a certain, you autograph it with a certain ink, so
Well, it's like the Greeks. There's a lot of debate about the beginning of money in general, but the idea was that the Greeks initially invented it to pay for prostitution because everything was on a trade deal. I have chickens, you have wheat, I'll take some of your wheat, I'll give you some of my chickens, that kind of thing. And then everybody was wondering why Edna in town had all these chickens all of a sudden, and especially the chicken herder's wife, right? So the idea being that I need something else where I can pay for stuff on the down low. And the other thing is you can't always carry a sandwich in your pocket, but you can carry a $5 bill. Was the idea is that this is money is potential. Money has value for what you can get from it, and an even standard for the applicability of that money is super important. The problem is, and this is the crucial part, the loaning area of money is completely up for grabs. It is not based on any intrinsic value. Like the credit rating that most normal people have is based on how much interest you can make off that person over the course of their loans. If you borrow money and pay it back immediately, you would think you would have a high credit score, but you don't, because the creditor is not going to make any money off you. They want you to extend that loan because they're loaning that money because that is their job. That is, they have this money. How do they want to pay their bills? They don't want to spend all their savings. They want to loan some of it out, and then they'll feed themselves with the interest. I have no problem with usury in general. I'm not biblical about that. But how you get money and how you're loaned to, like, nobody in this country has a worse credit score in reality than Donald Trump. And yet he's able to get hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars through these sketchy sources. And that in and of itself undervalues the quality of money because of who can get it and what they can spend it on. It's, you know.
If you got the Epstein picks.
Yeah.
The Epstein picks, that's got value in its
Oh
own
yeah,
right.
that is cash.
Yeah.
But it's stronger than gold. And I would argue that for all the people that, you know, say that either Trump or Clinton or somebody like that had a hand in Epstein's demise, if indeed he is dead, I'm reserving my feelings. I think the pictures of like Rip, the homeless guy who happened to look like Jeffrey Epstein, I fall sort of into that crowd, because once you're in that billionaire class, spending $300 million to buy your way out of dying in public isn't that hard to do. But that said, that's my own little, you know, nest egg conspiracy that I just enjoy. It has no meaning in the real world. But in doing that, yeah, all the people who benefit from that, right, all the people who benefit from that who aren't Donald Trump and the other people who are, you know, flew on his plane, either innocent or guilty. If you're the kind of person who would blackmail high multi-billion-dollar pedophiles, they're gonna do you in. I don't know that you think if you think you have friends in the world, you do not. I mean, it's a hard life. Yeah, it's a stupid business model more than almost any other, you know, because those people are already awful. They're worse than most murderers, most people know. So it's a curious thing. Anyways, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, good week. What's Epstein's credit rating now?
Yeah, right. I mean, like the island's for sale. We'll see. I appreciate you calling in. We got to take a break. Yeah. Good. Yeah, appreciate it. We'll see you. Call in anytime. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. WCPT820.com is the website. You can also get a podcast of the show at sexyliberal.com. The Hal Sparks Radio podcast, Mega Worldwide. Thank you, Chris Lavoie. And we'll be back right after this.
Academy Award winner Kevin Costner stars in Paramount Network's Yellowstone.
This is my home.
Summer's #1 drama returns Father's Day tomorrow at 9.
The family's the largest landowner in the valley.
I'm getting news, Devin. Or again, yeah, thank
Sorry.
you. Yeah, no problem. Jeffrey Epstein is still dead. Is he though, Amos? Is he? Is he?
Have we seen his body yet?
Nope. It was, you know, and he was alive when he reached the hospital was the thing. That was the story. That's the part that I always felt sketchy as hell, was that back and forth. You know, and yet they took a respirator off him as they were wheeling him in so you could see his face so people could get a picture. It just reeks. I know it has
Something
no
doesn't
meaning.
add
No
up.
meaning. No, it's one of those things where, like, do I have any evidence of this? Of course not. I can't possibly. I don't even live in New York. I wasn't around it or whatever. But
60 seconds.
It's one of those fun ones to toy with in your own head and go, yeah, and Ghislaine Maxwell being, out and about, huh? You know full well she was the shepherd for all this stuff, and she's still out. What? You're kidding me, right? Like, she can't take a $500 million of his money and help him get away so he can spend the other $3 billion? Please.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. It's now time for the happy ending. Yay!
Yeah, ish. As far as happy endings go. This whole thing about the SDNY aspect of things, I don't know why Barr thought this was going to go away, or that they could do this at 11 o'clock on a Friday night and it would go unnoticed. And like I said, the only way this isn't the talk of the Sunday shows and then multiple shows over the next week, because he didn't leave. He's sticking around. Berman is not going anywhere. If the only person who can get him out is Trump, has to fire him. Trump is the only one who can get rid of him in that regard. And it would, if he were to do that, it would draw even more attention to it. Clearly, attention they did not want, because it was a Friday night under the radar news dump. And he was, initially put in by Trump, but the fact that he was, I guess, revoted in by the judges of the court in New York makes it cements his position there until he can be replaced. You can't just swap it out for a different interim until he gets replaced, especially because the dude is actually actively investigating people, and he was your person. This is the part that always stuns me, is that Trump is always hiring people that he later says are wacko and out of control and nuts and everything. Bolton's the obvious target right now, but dozens of people who, the minute they start doing their job, even look at Alito and this week, the DACA ruling alone, Roberts and Alito, are now somehow the cause. Who put these people in charge? Gorsuch, for siding with LGBT rights. The things that came down this week in the Supreme Court. There's no wonder that Trump has been dismissive of these things, acting like they're inconsequential, or going, well, we live with the ruling or whatever, except for DACA, because that's the one his own supporters have been clamoring about. There'll be some pushback on that one. They've been viewed as traitors and treasonous, but you put them in there, and all they're doing is interpreting the law from a conservative point of view, which just points out that both the Trump himself, the Trump administration, and the GOP don't want conservative interpretation of the law. They want a protection racket. They want a giant substructure of Roy Cohns protecting them as they commit crimes. This has nothing to do with conservative versus liberal politics and whether or not, going out in COVID, when COVID going around without a mask on is some, exercise in freedom at the expense of killing, other Americans, but abortion is killing people at the expense of, you've got to curtail your freedoms because of, the pro-life aspect of well, you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs, and if it's a couple of grandmas got to die, that's just part of it. Business is business. And then making it look like every woman who has an abortion is just doing it to broaden her financial picture we're not talking about that kind of level of absurdity, those back and forth arguments, wherein there are dozens of areas where liberals or conservatives have taken a position on a particular issue, and you could argue the liberal or conservative argument for the opposite side of that issue in a good faith argument about something. We're not talking about that. We're talking about Donald Trump trying to install people to protect his criminal enterprise from being either discovered, uncovered, or shown to the American people in an election year for the second time in a row. That's all this is about. And we may wake up Monday morning to Trump firing Berman and making a deal out of it and calling him, out of control and all these other words that he uses for people like Bolton or anybody else that he's hired in any of these jobs, or any of the words that his supporters have been using about Gorsuch, Alito, or Roberts in this situation. These supposedly conservative judges that suddenly turned on the cause by simply interpreting the Constitution from a conservative point of view that they think will create law in the future that conservatives might actually give a crap about. So, like, this in and of itself is a totally different scandal. It is a totally different. Gorsuch not Alito. Thank you. Well, they all three of them had different feelings about these three cases. Susie Q in the chat room this week on both on DACA, the LGBT, and refusing to take on the Second Amendment. Virginia, I think it was a Virginia bill that they refuse. So, point being is that these folks, Trump is not about putting conservative judges in charge of things. Trump is about protecting his business, his specific businesses, and the businesses of some of his supporters, and in many cases, people who have loaned him money or have, I guess, compromised information on him, protecting those people from criminal proceedings. It has nothing to do with his actual belief about conservative principles. He has none. He has a singular one. He has a singular principle, and that is his own self-aggrandizement and preservation. That's it. So in all of these, we will be, I don't doubt that there will be more to this news, because I think Bill Barr expected this guy to whimper and disappear because he was originally on the team. I think Barr thought he could handle this, and what's done was done, and that would be that. And it isn't. And if Trump decides he's going to be the one to fire him, he's going to have to make a decent case for his justification for doing so, and he has none. And all it's going to do is draw more attention to the fact that this guy had put Michael Cohen away, somebody, by the way, that Trump said was a liar and a scumbag and deserved to go to jail, and was after Giuliani, who apparently is a national hero, according to Trump. So the picking and choosing of who he's going to go after and why, and his judgment about the character of Berman is indicative more of what Trump wants out of the Justice Department and wants out of it than the actual care about the law from a, like I said, constitutional point of view, a libertarian, conservative, or liberal point of view. It has nothing to do with this kind of an argument. We're looking at the financial dealings of a president and that information coming out between now and the election that have to do with a 5-person team of people who oversaw loans that the Trump organization and the family should not have gotten, and 3 of those people are dead. 1 from a plane crash, and 2 of them hung themselves. And God knows what kind of Epstein funds are floating around. Thanks for listening to the show. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I'll be back on my YouTube channel tonight for doing Trump's speech at the rally and mocking it incessantly, because that's a good time. We'll see you guys next week. Johnny Million will rejoin us back then. Thank you, Devin. Thanks to our callers. Big hugs to Ike. Thank you, Jill, for calling in. Thanks, Dave. Everybody, we will see you next time. Stick around for Dick K on the station, or you can join me for the post show at infotainmentwars.com.
All right, thanks, Al. See you next week.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Yeah. Cheers. Okay, we'll sign out on there. Close, one website at a time, so I don't totally lose my mind. This has been, good Lord. Here, I'll try and dig up, just because I think we're alone now. Good to see you guys. How are you? Hello. Welcome. This feels like, it's so funny, because after years of doing the radio show, this feels like the normal show now. just being with the chat room and hanging out with you guys. You know what I mean? Like, it takes me a little bit. It took me so long to get it all situated where I knew the breaks and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I know, no tech problems other than the fact that my software is frozen. I can't click on any other stuff. It's just locked in. But for you guys, I'm just there. Do you know the chicken herder's wife wound up doing to the chicken herder? Oh, yeah, she was on the receiving end, Jeff. Oh, thanks, Victoria. Yes, it is. Hi, Carl. Good to see you. Yeah, it's Father's Day. It's very exciting. Trump and I, both celebrate it in very different ways. I was going to have Camden interview me for something just to see what, real connection looks like. Yeah, and I can say shit now and not get in trouble. That's right. I'll foot chase anyone for my mail. Right. Thanks, Jody. That's what I'm trying to do. Should redo that song in your next album. I will. We actually have a new recording of that. That's the old recording, and it sounds way better. But I'm writing much more melodic stuff this time. Even the harder stuff I'm writing is more melodic. Apple's going to change Macs forever. Oh, I'm very excited. Let's see if there's any. I don't think it's up yet. It might be at. I don't think they can. Can they carry the rally on there? I don't know. I think so. Yeah, I don't think they can. I don't think they can live stream the rally there. So let's see. Whoops. Hey, Trump. I'll see if I can bring that. Thank you, Amos. Al Vickery is not a bot fund. No, he is not. Live, the Great American Comeback Festival in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Starting soon. Look at this. Oh, I can't show it to you. Crap. I have to reload my software to do that. I'll be back on there, whatever, but the graphic on it is hysterical. Good Lord. He literally is doing, they chose a picture of him where he's got his arms out, and it's the "what have you got to lose" moment. You know, his black people line that he says, and it's a sea of white people. There's like 1, 2 black people, and one guy's on his phone. There's a bunch of people in the front with their arms crossed, though, which is very weird. Although, yeah. Piano is coming along well. I got, I'm on level 10 now. David's having Al Sparks, but my real question is, when will Biden have a root beer summit with voters of different generations and incoming levels instead of another dubious Bulworth debate among multi-millionaires? Bulworth debate, what do you mean? I mean, he's been doing, like, these virtual town halls. Is it, you mean a non-virtual thing? And yeah, I think you'll be back online later. Probably the normal time at, well, let's see. They're supposed to be on at, is it 7 p.m. Central in Tulsa? So 5 o'clock, I guess. Yeah. So I'll be back on at like 5 p.m. my time. Pretty sure. Oh, there's no mail right now, Jude. But welcome back. Hi. You see Trump on a phone at the round table. Yeah, well, I streamed that. I was live. Remember when, everybody's on about that. But if you'll recall, while we were doing it, I stopped and went, this asshole's still on his phone. You guys remember that? If you were watching, if you're a regular watcher of the stream, a bunch of you saw that. So, yeah. This is ridiculousness. So, I can't, for whatever reason, Streamlabs is being very weird about stuff, and it's not letting me change channels. Oh, Ginger, hi. Thank you. It's a lovely Father's Day gift. I appreciate it. Thank you. This is so weird that when Streamlabs gets hung up, it's so very odd. That's really lovely. Thank you so much. Yeah. James, thank you so much. If Hal Victory is a bot contingency fund, just in case. Where did we get on Hal Victory being a bot? Where did it, because that would be amazing. It would be one of the best bots there is. If that were the case. You mean all of his super chats have been Bitcoin this whole time? Should we be talking to him in ones and zeros, Al Vickery? Thank you, Ginger. And Robert Reynolds and Jomo 5760 in the Twitch chat. Good to see you guys as well. Yes, no, Al Vickery is definitely not a bot. I agree. This whole sketchy thing about Edison Mitchell, Tom Bauman, and William Brokesmith all being dead and all being linked to Trump's loans from Deutsche Bank, specifically the hiding of them, is just messed up. And I don't know how that doesn't end up being a bigger scandal, a bigger story, and maybe it's because I'm not reading those, those kind of books that often, because I already am in the news and I'm always talking about it and stuff. So I don't tend to read all those. Hey, cosplay interview, how are you? When cosplay interview, when is my interview? Just saying. At what point do I ever get? No, I'm not ever gonna get a chance to be interviewed. I'm just saying. That's all right. Oh, well, thank you. When I get a full costume built, I'll come on. What do I have to be dressed for it? I think I should. I need a whole outfit. Can I create my own character? Is it cosplay if it's your own superhero? I don't know. I knew it. I didn't know it, but I knew it. How do you think it's going to go tonight? I think it's going to be ridiculous and embarrassing and stupid and more of the same, and him just, reading a little bit of his speech and then just an airing of the grievances, and he's going to love it. And then people are going to talk about the nonsense he spouts, and most of the Sunday shows are going to be about what Barr did Friday night, and he's going to be pissed. And by Friday, the dew will have come off the lily, and he's just going to be miserable. Yes, there's still an Interpol, and they are looking into all this stuff. Richard, thank you so much. Now you need a girl. I have one each myself. I would love a daughter. I would love more kids. People know this about me. It may entail me, having to have them when I'm 80, but it'll happen. His gag-tacular voice, yeah. I think the city is going to be on fire. I hope there's no ancillary damage. I don't want. Thanks so much, Richard. I don't want. I'm never calling for violence in any of these situations, and I certainly don't want riots or looting or any of that kind of stuff, because it's just dangerous and stupid. Richard, I actually raised a friend of mine's daughter till she was 6, long time ago. I was part of her raising. I didn't do it by myself. I was the guy around, as it were, for many of those years. And I like to think I played a pivotal part in her upbringing. I hope so. Went to med school, so that's good. So Sarah had a baby at 90. That's right. The glass of water thing makes me think Trump has been having small strokes. It's entirely possible, Ogmuse. I also think it's entirely possible that he just has golf-related damage and is too weak to admit it. Although, hips and shoulders are really bad with golfers. That said, all the word sludge and drifting and weird inability to, with impulse control and getting hooked on certain ideas and, doing this kind of verbal loop in his head, all that stuff on top of the stress of being president, and I guess in charge of, 1,500 crap LLCs that have 14 loans with people who want to murder you, might be a little bit taxing on your nervous system. You know what I mean? Just possibly. I think his arm was tired because he saluted all the cadets. Oh, maybe. I'm sure the drug use doesn't help. Yeah, also like, is it benzodiazepine that he supposedly takes, and Sudafed, the crushed Sudafed that he snorts from Europe that has meth in it, basically, and the that people use as a stimulant, and what else? Adderall, the snorting of Adderall. Although Noel, you know, who was the warm-up guy on The Apprentice, says, you know, the Adderall snorting was just for, you know, in polite company. That after that wore off, it was meth and coke, and that his whole thing about not drinking hid the fact that he does all kinds of other stuff. So, yeah. Hey, Kristen, how are you? Hi, everybody. Hey, Connie. He may have some brain blockages. His doctor does not seem too confident. No, he definitely has some brain blockages, whether they're, you know, physical or psychological, or a combination. I would say both. Thank you, Debbie, for kitty litter. And since my Patreon installment won't start until July 1st, thank you so much. Thanks for becoming a patron. Yeah, it starts at the $5 level. If you want to be higher than that, you guys can certainly help that way. That also helps our goal. But we've got 270 patrons now. I'm so proud of you guys. This time last year, we had, this time last year we had 6. So I am so excited that you guys have chosen to be on this journey with us as we build this show. Wow, Richard, that's amazing. Billy, thank you so much to the Father's Day and Cat Food Fund. Yes, they do go hand in hand. What is Adderall? Adderall is an ADHD drug that people use for focus, which, curiously enough, if you use it off-label, like a lot of the other focus and ADD drugs, they can make you racist. And I know you're thinking, how is that possible? How can you make a normal person racist? Well, and by the way, we have 270 now. We're working towards 300. And this is how it works. Racism at its root is a form of pattern recognition, hyper-focused pattern recognition. You see a pattern among behaviors and in people based on color, simplistic views of pattern recognition. And then you get locked into that and you start excluding any evidence that would conflict with that. And you start hyper-focusing on evidence that it works. And so it's good for coders and math people because that's all they care about. There is no, if you're in math, you don't have to worry about prose. And if you're working on coding, you don't want to focus on anything else. You want to work on if it works, whether the pattern works, the blocks fit together. At some point, if you use that stuff, it can help you focus and learn stuff. And there's a lot of, you know, off-label nootropic use of Adderall, especially in college students these days, has been for the last 15 years or so. And you can almost tell from the speech patterns of people like Ben Shapiro and others that they're constantly on it. And if you look at how they see the world, it is like an active biochemical confirmation bias that's going on with them. So if you take a drug that helps you with pattern recognition, it's good for studying, it's good, like I said, for coding and math. It's terrible for human interaction. And it, in and of itself, creates a situation where you will start assigning beliefs and patterns around things you recognize, and anything you do not recognize that interferes with that pattern, you will discard. You will brush away. And so kids who are on that stuff can be hyper-focused, and a lot of boys have been put on it over the last 30 years. One of the tracks of the rise in racism in this country is directly tied to Adderall and Ritalin. And any doctor will tell you that there are issues with this. In many ways, the same as certain drugs. You'll see them like, if you take this drug and you start gambling wildly, they mess with your impulse control. It's just an ancillary effect of some drugs. This is one of those contraindications for Adderall and Ritalin. And because that's what it's built for. It's built for you to hyper-focus on patterns and allow you to exclude anything that is not part of that pattern, so you can focus on your schoolwork, focus on your interactions, focus on what you're doing, and get it done. You can get rid of your, what we have clinically started calling ADD, attention deficit disorder. The same parts of the brain that make you wander in thought are also the part that help you with your empathy and include other people's emotions in what's going on, and have you, think about the ancillary effects of what your behavior will cause, or your own emotional response to those kind of things. And it limits and cuts those things out. So it will make you go, black people like this, Asian people like this, Jews like this, white people like this, and your own entrenched confirmations about those kind of things will get fed repeatedly, and anything, your disbelief about them, will be thrown out as unuseful. And this is also, you see this play out sometimes in liberals that use this stuff, or have been on this stuff, or have brains that were built on this stuff, in the sort of like anti-white flagellation some of them do, because they start going, white people are blah, even though they're white themselves. It's the same biochemical reflex and the inability to allow your thoughts and the patterns that you see to be porous and complex. And that's, honest to God, one of the main reasons we've seen a rise in what we've seen over the last 15 years especially. It's also related to like school shooters in the same way, that when you put certain kids on it, they will hyperfixate on how they're being treated, or certain groups of kids will become an actual entity. So when you're bullied, instead of just being, okay, that person's a dick, but his buddy's okay, but 3 of them are assholes, and everybody else is fine, it's suddenly the school is against me, because everything is dovetailed off this pattern that you are confined to seeing biochemically, because the porous aspects of your experience are being spackled shut by this drug. That's a big part of it. And until we come to recognize that Da Vinci had, by everyone else's measure, ADD, if you want to call it, it wasn't a disorder when he had it. It was genius interacting with the possibilities of the world. And somebody who, I would argue, rides my ADD like a horse. It's not a negative to me. I don't have attention deficit disorder. I have multiple interests. My symbol, guys, the symbol that I use, that a lot of you are familiar with, this guy, it's yellow. You can't see the yellow one with the green screen. That's funny because it's one of the overlapping. That's pretty cool. I should put that on there. Yeah. So this guy, this was based on, I'll do the gray one, because can you see this one? Yeah. So the principle of this diagram, which I'm now calling the spark, by the way. You like it? This is what the blue patch is. I ordered more blue ones. I was out. So I did not expect, when I got these originally, I was not going to use them for Patreon. They were for other stuff. And I used up all the blue ones mailing them out, and I still didn't have enough, because I didn't make that many, because it was just supposed to be for my own clothing and other stuff. So I had to order them, and of course, then, crap hit the fan. But the idea being is that your base instincts and your highest lofty ideas and your hobbies and your professional interests pull at each other all the time, creating tension. I need more free time. I need to work on, things that, language skills and other things that I can learn. I need to work on my job, but I also need things that fulfill me, and they may be at conflict at times. The tension between all those things are what make you a whole person. And branding, as we see it, is the singularity of making the only one arrow count. This is what Adderall does. This is what Ritalin does to a human being. It puts all the emphasis on one of the arrows of the aspect of your personality, and ignores the tension that's created that makes you a human being, by going, my lofty ideas and my baser instinct are fused together, and the fight against my own baser instincts while I focus on my lofty ideas is what makes me human and empathetic to people who are in the same struggle. If you ignore that they exist and you only go, I am only about my lofty ideas, I don't have any baser instincts. You don't reflect on your shadow side. You don't look at the parts of yourself that require work. Nothing propels the work. It's all academic. It's all emotionless. Same thing is true of all the lateral aspects of your life. And so I created this as a symbol to myself to respect all the aspects of my person and not just, oh, well, I'm not using that for anything. I don't need this or whatever, because then you're lopsided. You're less of a human being. And you don't, and if you look at someone else who's struggling with the issue, you'll pretend, well, I don't know why they have that problem. I don't have any addictions. I don't waste my time. I don't, you get this idea in your head that somehow, well, when I focus on my professional aspect, you can do it for a time, but everything else in your life will be out of whack. And you don't recognize that you struggle with that time. You see somebody else who seems to be doing very well in their business and in their experience in life, we tend to write off the aspects that they fought against. It's like when you see somebody sitting at the piano. This is kind of germane because for those of you that don't know, and no money is exchanged hands, I'm not promoting this at all. This is just a way that I found to do it. I'm using Quincy Jones's Playground piano program because it seemed to be the best one for me with my setup to be able to, since I'm at the computer a lot, when I'm in the middle of doing something, I can use this to better myself. I knew that I had a tug in the direction of always being at my computer and working on these things, on other stuff, so that if I could take the thing I wanted to achieve and attach it to the thing I'm always at, then I can use that tension. Go, well, I'm bored and I'm sitting here, but I can't leave because I need, as soon as this is done uploading, I need to do something. So I can do this right here, right? So that's why I did it. So this symbol to me became reflective of, and I needed to make a reminder of myself, to myself all the time, that they matter, that practice, the tension of practicing and the boredom of doing it leads to the genius of being able to play. And that's always been there. And some people look at a 12-year-old piano virtuoso and they go, oh my God, this kid is a genius. I could never play like that. But when you look at the kid's been playing since 6, their parents are concert pianists. There was always a piano in the house. They didn't let him have a TV, and that's all they were able to do. If that was your life for 6 years, if you were in a cabin and the only thing in that place was a piano and 2 books, and your days were made up like eating and looking at the river, you'd be a pretty damn good piano player by the end of it. You know what I mean? After 6 years alone in that cabin with that piano, you'd be damn good. So it is disingenuous to look at the hard work that people put into being a genius and go, oh, okay, they are so good at what they do. And because you tend to write off the work that they did. And in doing that, you do 2 things. One is you would totally ignore the work that they put in, and you look at them as something magical, which is unfair to them and the amount of work they did. And you also put something that you might want to attain out of your own reach because you pretend that work is not the route by which you get there. And it absolutely is. And the desire not to want to work on those things, which happens to everybody, it gets frustrating to practice and work on things. That tension is always there for everybody. And so that tension pulling you down to like, go eat something, go watch TV, go do boring things, is always at tug with, but I want this thing. They're always at play. And that tension, by the way, is what makes you the artist you are. Because when you break through it, you're like, oh my God, I have this skill now. And I have all this built up frustration that will play into the music that I'm writing. In that case. And this is true of practicing writing. This is true of any crafts you make, any skill you have, learning math, learning a foreign language, the tension of learning the foreign language and the drudgery of grammar and all that kind of stuff creates the release when you finally dream in the language or speak to someone fluidly. That, you know, and then again, sometimes you have this situation where the practice itself becomes the thing, and you get fear of competing because it matters. You become too much of a perfectionist. And Seth, I am a fan of the 10,000 hours theory. But if you can do 10,000 hours of mechanical piano playing, and eventually you'll get good, but where's the soul of it? That's true too. That happens as well. But the point I'm trying to make is that's where that symbol came from. That's where the design came from. I drew it from my acting teacher to explain. She was like, why do you focus on your acting? Because you're a really good actor. Why do you need to do stand-up and all these other things? And I went, because they make me the artist that I am. I'm not the actor I can be unless I do all those other things, because they inform who, like all the characters that I play, the frustrations of not being able to learn something, the joy of actually being able to learn it, the abilities that I have, the language ability that I have, the ability to stand on stage after being afraid to stand on stage and then being able to. Both of those are characters. The person who never could before they did, and the person who can't imagine not doing it, are two characters I can play honestly now. Whereas if I was an actor who was cast to play a comedian, what am I going to do? Go bullshit my way through some open mics and pretend I know what it's like to be a stand-up? Get out of here. So all of that stuff is crucial to who you are, and branding severs that. And the ADD concept, and some people, it's torturous and they learn to deal with it and they need medication. I'm not talking to that crowd. That's not my business. That's none of my business. That's your own life. And everything I say is within the confines of apply this to your life to the maximum amount of value with zero damage. Anything I say, anything I present to you. So I created this as a reminder to myself. Everything I do, by the way, whether I write something or even this show in a lot of ways, I do as an exercise in my own value. How can I add value to the world? And, you know, that's why I did this show for free for years, because I felt like I got to contribute as a citizen to our democracy. This is one of the ways I can do it, you know? And so, but my agent and other people wish I wasn't available so much, because there's some sort of mystery idea. Well, maybe that works for some people. It doesn't work for me. It's not what I want. It's not the artist that I am. Never will be. So go with what's real, not with what you think, how you think the mechanic should work. And eventually it will work on its own merit. So anyways, that's where that came from. And that's where the whole idea of like ADD, by removing these other arrows from your life, the tension of work and play and hobbies and vocation and mathematics and philosophy, by removing elements of those things, you dissipate your ability to empathize with other human beings and recognize things that are off pattern. And Ritalin and Adderall and those kind of things are hyper-patterning drugs. And they may have value for some people during certain jobs. I know one of my dear friends smokes, you guys know I don't do any drugs, but my friend smokes pot he's a musician, but he only does it when he's mixing in the creation process. He doesn't smoke weed when he's writing. He doesn't smoke it when he's, practicing. He doesn't do it when they're rehearsing. He does it when they're mixing, because for him it works like an ADD drug. It centers his focus on working on what they're doing, but it doesn't eliminate his emotional stuff. Like, I don't think he needs it, and it may be a psychological addiction on his part. Not my room to say, but that's what he uses it for. And so in some cases, some people may need that kind of thing. It may benefit them. I'm drinking coffee. Coffee is technically a nootropic. It's caffeine. It focuses your brain temporarily on and gives you some sense of energy during that. That in and of itself, that's a biochemical manipulation of your system. It does not, though, insofar as I know, limit your ability to look at someone and see that their heart is broken. And Adderall and Ritalin and meth and Sudafed crushed up and cocaine, all those drugs do. That's why they are, look at the industries that they grow in, you know. It's not the artists necessarily doing the coke. Artists are doing heroin and pot. It's the producers. How do I take this and make money off of it? How do I fit this into that? Square peg, round hole, maybe this will help. And that's one of the ancillary effects of it. And it, unless there's a special guidance given, all forms of ADD stuff are in danger of making you overly associate certain patterns with humanity. And they can make you racist. They won't make you, you know, if you're a decent human being and you're just not built for racism, maybe, what they'll make you do is flagellate yourself as anti-racist, and you'll think that that's the same thing. It'll have the similar effect, but from a different angle on you. So that's my little warning. That's where I think that came from. I think there's been a distinct rise because of it. I think like you can track lead paint and lead gasoline to the spike of violent crime and the downward slope of violent crime in the United States. Don't get me started on unventilated gun ranges. Along with that, you can also track the rise in school shooters and the rise in YouTube racism and algorithms built the way they are, to Ritalin and Adderall and the spike of use of those drugs to get people to settle down and learn one particular thing on a clock. We've also moved past that. You know, like education has softened around those kind of things and is adapting. So that's just my own personal feeling on it, but I've seen it play out in a bunch of places. Go to Politicon. It's just an Adderall and Ritalin swamp. So pay attention to that part of it, but also I would say pay attention to your own baser instincts and your bad thoughts that you dismiss and go, okay, I'm morally and ethically designed myself so that I can have those thoughts and look past them, recognize them as unhelpful, negative, dangerous, bad, whatever, moral judgment or ethical judgment you put on them. I can live past that. But I'm talking to someone who doesn't recognize that they have the ability to do so. Thank you, Liberty B. So you have you may have found a way to, ride that wave or crest that wave or survive the flood. But you're talking to someone who hasn't. And if you're aware of your own reflexive feelings about some things, then you're much more in touch with how you could communicate to that person and help them out of it. If you pretend you don't have them, and this is why I'll take a converted liberal, over a, Montessori school, wealthy, always born and bred liberal any day, because they have recognized through their own ethical and moral upbringing that there's a better way to be, as opposed to somebody who, if they were just raised in a different place, they'd be at Jesus camp and they'd be an anti-abortion activist thinking that Tiller should have died. That's what I'm talking about. Those folks are, it's Jonestown, it's Kool-Aid, it's just upbringing. There is no alternative for them. Whereas somebody who's actually grown through it goes, you know what? I know what it's like to be there. It's like these guys who were in gangs who talk to gang members and try to get them out. They're the ones you listen to if you're in a gang because they've been there, as opposed to somebody who's just preaching at you, who doesn't understand why you would even want to be in a gang to start with. So I would just float that out there, that when you look at the Ben Shapiro's of the world, to me, literally when I see him speak, he looks like someone who was, he looks like a brain burned on Adderall. And Trump and his family all reek of it. you know, you can see what a hard time their brain has accepting an alternate view of things. And there's a lot of folks running around like that because there was a generational drugging of kids in our country. Oh, thank you, Julius. I appreciate that. It will go to the Kitty Toy Fund. I appreciate it. So that, you know, this is not that, you know, I'm not letting people off the hook if they're being morally reprehensible or whatever. Everybody's responsible for themselves if they're a grown adult. But I can recognize someone in the same way that if I see somebody who's been burned out on heroin or, you know, has wrecked themselves on drugs, you recognize you're talking to the remnants of a person, and you have to factor that in. So anyways, that's, I don't know how we got off on that train, but that's the beauty of not believing that attention has its own worth. So yeah, tapping Sal Superhouse. Yes, I see the super hearts. Thank you, Lipschitz and Jay Bruner and Dave Silva, and yeah, and it froze up on me, so I couldn't see the ones in there except the ones that come up on screen. If I was talking, I would miss them. So yeah, but anyways, I'm gonna sign off because I'm gonna be back on later. And thank you, Liberty B, for the super hearts. Appreciate it. And Lipschitz, thank you as well. So I'll be back on for the Trump rally speech later on. We'll pick that apart and have a little bit of fun. My software won't allow me to switch over channels, or I would continue working on stuff. But big hugs to all of you. Thank you guys for hanging out. I always love, like I said, this feels like more of the show than the radio is these days. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up on your way out the door if you haven't already. And I will. And if you can't watch the stream later on, then you know, watch it at your leisure. It'll be posted just like these are. And of course, subscribe to the sexyliberal.com, the podcast they put up there, the Hal Sparks Radio Podcast, Mega Worldwide. Subscribing and stars help me out there too. If you guys do that, if you don't, that's cool too. Whatever. I feel like everybody there's so much of an ask these days, but I only ask the people who that's normally how they do stuff, if that's where you want to go. So take care of yourself, take care of somebody else. I will see you guys later on. You're wonderful. Don't let anybody tell you different. And I will see you tonight for the rally. Oh God, just what a mess. All right.